Well, hello class. Welcome to the start of Unit 3. Hey, we have a lot to go over this week and some things to go over from the last unit and then kind of give you a sneak peek into where we're headed. So this week we go over quite a bit. So we're going to look at Super's career development theory, social cognitive theory, circumscription and compromise, conceptualizing development and cognitive theories. And I know that oftentimes when you hear words like that, cognitive theories, probably the, kind of the, I guess I could say this, the bookworm or the academic side of us kind of geeks out, right? We get all excited and we think, oh yeah, cognitive theories, because obviously you've spent a considerable amount of time studying so far in your MFT program, things along those lines of cognitive theories and so forth, behavioral and all of the content that goes into creating this overall degree that you are in. So I know, just hearing from students in the past, whenever you have some of these similar ideas and theoretical frameworks to work with as it relates to career, always folks kind of get excited about that. So I hope that's the case for you. Let me do a couple of housekeeping things as we kind of think where we've been so far. So last week, we obviously had our Unit 2 forum discussion, our case study number 1 and 2, and then our first LibTAC 321 response, along with our well-being response paper. So I just want to comment on a couple of things. Looking here as far as who did the work and who didn't. You know if you did the work, and then you obviously know if you didn't do the work. I am a little surprised that there are some folks that just didn't do the work. And we've talked about this, but it's really important that you stay on top of your assignments, given the reality that this is going quickly, okay? So we are already well into week 4 of our semester, and I don't anticipate that the semester is going to slow down anytime soon, okay? So your attention to detail is going to be very important. So for those of you who didn't do the forum discussion, so looking at the forum discussion, some of you just didn't share your initial thoughts. There are no points to be received if you didn't do your first posts as far as your initial thinking with regard to the questions that were asked last week. Okay, so nothing we can do with that. Those points are gone. I will, hear me say this, I will allow you still, if you can complete things by this Friday, and I'm actually talking with our TA hopefully tomorrow. He's just some scheduling conflicts, he's out of town and so forth. We're going to talk through what that looks like. I'm looking here and I see that some of you didn't complete the case studies. So case study number 1 and 2 was not completed. LibTAC 321 response, the first one was not completed by some. So this, again, this is something where you need to take responsibility for your learning, and you're going to get out of it what you put into it, essentially. I mean, you've heard that before, but I don't think it's any less true. In fact, I think it's all the more true in an online class. Again, we've talked about these things. Like, I'm not hearing from a lot of you to know if there's questions that you have, and then I'm assuming that you haven't done the work. There's probably questions that you haven't, so I'm not sure which one it is, and I don't know exactly what to speak to. So I'm always more than willing to respond via email, to take a phone call if we need to meet in person or do a Google Hangout. I'm happy to do that. But just again, I want to reiterate the importance of really staying on top of things because things will quickly fly by. Okay, so again, if you didn't do the first responses and then the engaged conversation in units 1 and 2 for the forums, those points are gone. But I will let you, if you can complete the case studies, if you didn't do it already, by Friday at midnight, you can get caught up and do those, because those case studies will be very important. I think I mentioned from the beginning, I don't like busy work. Okay, so I just don't like it. It's not a good use of my time, or I guess it's not a good use of your time, because then your busy work ends up being my busy work. And so if I'm going to look at this, from a personal, I guess you could even say selfish standpoint, I don't want to give any of my students busy work because I don't want to do busy work myself. So if I'm going to give students assignments and different things they have to do on a daily or weekly basis, I want it to be meaningful because I want it to be something that's going to actually contribute to your overall learning, that's going to help you in your thought process, that's going to help to kind of connect the dots, and to think, about what am I doing in this class? Why is it important? Had a conversation with an incoming MFT student and just kind of gave the big picture of this class. And was able to connect the dots and say why we do what we do. And so everything that we're doing here, your 3, 2, 1. So what are 3 takeaways? What are 2 questions? And what are one big idea? One kind of an actionable item? Because I want you to really engage in the reading and be thinking deeply about this content and saying, what are my big takeaways? What are my aha moments? And what things perhaps what am I still not clear on? The case studies, again, these are, you kind of nuance these responses. And so I don't think it's, I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, but there's really no right or wrong answer in the case studies. And again, I'll make the case for why that is, because you're going to find techniques and approaches to the work that you do with clients that works, right? You're going to find these little intricate ins and outs. And for me, what you do may not work for me. Similarly, what I do may not work for you. And so if you are, thinking, thoughtfully and thoroughly, if you will, about how you would respond to these case studies, it's getting you in the habit of thinking, okay, so if I had a client, a legitimate client came in and had this situation, what would I do? We're thinking about these things from a diversity standpoint. And there was a comment made last week, and kind of what are some of the subconscious biases that I bring into the conversation. And so those are questions that we'll kind of wrestle through this semester, is what biases do you bring? What are some things that you've told you can't or shouldn't do based upon a number of different factors in life, right? And so are we bringing those biases into the conversation when we work with our clients? So it's important that we are aware of those biases, and then we do all that we can to ensure that they're not brought into our conversation, because those may be true for us, or we may think they're true, or we may have been told that they are true. And if we're not careful, they can creep into the conversations, and oftentimes we can end up projecting these biases on our clients, and of course that's a dangerous place for all of us to be. So when you complete the case studies, again, it's going to be, did you do the case studies, and did you think about them? Were you thorough in responding? I'm not looking for a set answer, because I want you to kind of have that freedom to think, okay, how would I personally respond? It's the same idea for why I don't like rubrics. So if I kind of gave you a, one-size-fits-all approach to dealing with clients in a career space, if maybe it was a checklist or a list of things you had to address, you're probably your first inclination is to refer to how you would work with a client by way of going down this list and checking boxes. And I don't think that actually does you any good. I definitely know it doesn't do the client any good, because if you're just checking boxes to say I did this, you're not oftentimes speaking to the core of the issue. Okay, it's the same idea for why I don't like rubrics, because I give you rubrics, but if I give you rubrics, oftentimes you just end up going down the list and checking boxes, and that's not actually speaking to the assignment itself. Okay, so I'm going to give you until Friday to get caught up on your case studies. Okay, the LibTech 321 gone. The forum's gone. So those points, they're lost, they're over, but I will give you some time to get caught up on the case studies if need be, okay? And again, it's just, I want you to do all of this, but there are certain things that have passed us by, and at this point in time, we're just done with those elements, okay? All right, so let me switch gears then and get into the LibTech 321 from last week. Yeah, so here's a great question, and this is one that I want to at least, I don't have I guess a definitive answer for you, or kind of an authoritative answer, but I think it's one that we definitely need to consider, and one that will come up quite often. The question asked is, what will happen in the future to the labor force with the advancement of career technology? Yeah, isn't that a great question? So there's lots of discussion going on with, artificial intelligence, and already we're seeing jobs being lost to technology, and robots are taking over in different laboratory settings, and People are saying, well, you're going to raise, even the discussion of raising the minimum wage, and if it's going to cost people more money to eat in places unless they cut back on labor costs, can robots do some of these jobs that have commonly been done by humans? So there's a couple of different takes on here. I think first of all, to ask the question, you're right in doing so. We have to consider this. We also have to realize and consider the fact that for I don't know how long, probably since I don't know the since we've been working, there has been a cyclical process that occurs, right? That certain jobs exist, and then things happen, and then those jobs no longer exist. So think about even the Industrial Revolution, and think about jobs that existed pre-industrial revolution, and then when that revolution took place, and we incorporated more industrial type technological advances, and all the more certain jobs have then disappeared. They become more automated. And some would say that in automation, the quality of the work that's done actually is decreased, and I think that that's a fair statement in some aspects. But I think that if we keep that in mind, the other thing to consider is that there's always been this cyclical process where jobs exist, new jobs come into play, old jobs no longer exist, and then it just kind of goes through this cycle. And so once again, jobs exist, new jobs come into play, old jobs no longer exist, and so forth. So even if you think of the iterative process with self-driving vehicles, if you were like me growing up, you watched the Jetsons and you saw these vehicles that, they flew. And are we nearing that? Well, some would say we are. Some are saying that there's already prototypes in existence. But someone's got to make those self-driving vehicles, right? So those jobs will exist. So perhaps, already we're seeing different iterations from a gig economy standpoint, where you have Uber it's disrupting it has been, or Lyft is and has been disrupting the traditional taxi service industry. So people are making vehicles, and yes, the younger generations are not getting licenses as quickly. They're not driving as often. I have a neighbor whose son is a senior in high school and has no interest in getting his license because he can just Uber everywhere. Well, that gets really expensive really quickly, and so I don't know that the car is going anywhere anytime soon. I think the prevalence of the vehicle may, decrease. And then some might even say, is that a bad thing? I try to ride my bike when possible to my office. And so there's lots of changes. And if we just kind of hide our head in the sand and ignore them or pretend they're not happening, that's a problem. Acknowledging them is definitely the first step. Accepting them and so forth. And then adapting, I think, is really important. So we adapt and we innovate and we iterate and we develop prototypes for new jobs. I was in a class the other day and a colleague was praying. It was a job class about work and jobs and vocation. And he was praying that these students, these undergraduate students, that they would be, that their minds might be awakened to think about new jobs that don't exist yet today that may in the future. And so I think we'll see a significant swing of the pendulum when it comes to technology advances, and that will do away with certain jobs. And there'll be some jobs that we just have to always have a human touch. So being aware of those things, utilizing technology, making the most of it, enhancing the work of the human being with technology is huge. And I think oftentimes, as much as we can, becoming indispensable. So yes, technology could be cheaper and faster, but is it going to be better? Is it going to be as effective as the human being? Those are things to consider. There's another question here. Same individual asked, is career counseling really more effective than psychotherapy? And that's a big question. And I know I just spent a lot of time on technology. So by saying that something is more effective or better, it's inferring, I think sometimes not inferring, but it's directly stating that something is less effective or worse. And I think that in this circumstance, it's fair to say that they're different. And in their differences, then the client, the therapist, the counselor decide, is it better for the specific situation? Okay, so lots going on this week, lots of great questions. Keep them coming. Get caught up on your case studies by Friday, and then definitely make sure to engage in the forums as instructed in the syllabus. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If not, I will see you online. Hope you have a great week.